Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another PoE video. This one we're going to talk about the 3.22 quick recap of the Trial of the Ancestor patch notes. Some of the things that stood out the most for me personally. You might hear that my voice is pretty fucked up. Like many other streamers after XLCon, we got COVID. So sadly, you're going to have to live with this voice. I do apologize for that. Hope you guys can actually hear what I'm saying anyways. So before we crack into the patch notes, there's a couple things we got to talk about. First one is that there are 202 mentions of ruthless in this patch note. But most importantly, before we dig into the ruthless topic, this patch note is essentially, oh my god, this patch note is one of the shortest we've seen in quite some time. They have said in the past that they want to try to go to a scenario where they are making big changes every second league and then smaller changes every second league. I think this is a really good change, allowing us to be in a position where every second league is more easier to manage, in my opinion. I think this is a good thing because a lot of people are very upset when they nerf their most favorite build, and this allows people to have a longer period of time they can play whatever is the meta of that era, if you will. That said, though, I get it. It's very few changes in this specific change. This league around compared to last league that had a lot of changes. There are still some significant meta shakeups, in my opinion. We're going to talk about them real quick. But I'm not personally a big fan of this much attention to Ruthless. But some people like it. I don't know, leave a comment down below below the video what you guys think of it. I was kind of surprised to see that literally 50% of this league's patch notes is ruthless. I am not a big fan of this at all. I feel like it's crazy, but at the same time, since they're making fewer changes in the general game, they are now taking that opportunity to make more changes in ruthless. So is it a bad thing? No, I don't think it's a bad thing. I really don't. But it does feel very awkward reading the patch notes and seeing that literally half of them is ruthless. But again, I want to say that like I mentioned, one league, they want to make big changes and then wait for 2 leagues before they do that again. And the 2-league cycle on smaller changes. And this is the smaller change. So if they're going to put a lot of focus and effort into ruthless, this is a great opportunity to do so. Great. I don't know. Just want to point it out because it was kind of surprising to me to see it. I'm not mad at them or anything like that for them to do so, but I wanted to point it out either way. So since we have a very short patch note, this is going to be a very quick video. So I want to talk about a couple of things. I will make a separate video to talk about the Guardian Blessing support. Just want to point that out. It's going to be on the YouTube channel, so check it out when it comes. So with the new gem information, I wanted to mention the first thing is obviously the fact that we're in a position where we need gem information to determine whether they are good or not. Most importantly, this comes with things like Guardian's Blessing. I'm going to read through this real quick. It says that it must support a skill that creates a minion which can be damaged to no skill or bots, and an aura skill. And this will create a permanent aura around you. Supported aura skill have no reservation and counts as a blessing skill. And blessing skills such as Divine Blessing, are in a position where it costs a lot of mana. Previously, we used this to pay life for it, which is no longer possible, to get that extra aura on a time base. This allows minion builds to actually get another permanent aura very effectively, because the idea of this is that it's supposed to be doing a percentage of the maximum life as physical damage per second while you have an aura from that supported skill on you. Now, this is a really crazy cool idea to the game. Obviously, socket starvation is a topic that's going to be brought up. But most importantly, there is no information here whether or not how reduced the effect of this aura is. Is it worth the investment? Can we use this effectively on the Animate Guardian? Is the effect of the aura so good enough for us to warrant that extra 2 support gems, or if you will, 1 aura and 1 support gem to make this work? But you can only have 1 because it's a blessing. It counts as a blessing. Very excited about this. I'll make a separate video about this specific skill. I think there's a lot more information to be tackled when it comes to this and the efficiency that it brings to the table. However, there's a couple of other things, such as the emblems changes from Legion. The reason I'm going to talk about this specifically is not just the monster level being changed to be a little lower in general, unless you're running the Unrelenting, which is the Uber version. They are removing the 20% increase in experience gain for each timeless emblem, and they're reducing it by 50% on the Unrelenting. So they still have the buff, but you only get half of it now. So why does this matter? Essentially, we are looking at the most lazy AFK-based experience boosting system in the game, which is 5-way carries, where you would only get a little bit of chaos rest, and you sit there. There's an aura bot that's making you more or less immortal, and a carry is killing everything. You level so fast with this strategy. It's disgusting how good it is. However, now with the experience loss gain removed, this means that having things like a setup where you are acting as a map leecher for a Giga Juice group that's running with an aura bot is going to be better experience. The problem with that are two things. One, you can't AFK it. Two, there's a higher risk of you dying in those situations compared to the 5-way carry system. So I think that this will actually play in the favor of 5-way carries, where people are going to buy these carries nonetheless, because it's still a very effective way, even if you only get half the experience you did before. Why? Well, one, you can AFK it. Two, it's just lazy and it's effective still, even with this nerf. This means that people running 5-way are going to sell more runs, because it's going to take more runs for the player that is purchasing them to get to their desired level. So this is something that's going to be quite noticeable in the coming league from my perspective. The other changes I want to talk about is the Guardian Ascendancy changes. There's quite a few things in this list. So the ones I took out and made notes for is that the minions that is supplied by the Ascendancy nodes here, we have zero information about this. Quite a few years ago, we had some new minions out. I reached out to Chris Wilson. I said, yo, it's very frustrating to make guides and content to explain things to new players when we see a new minion come into play and we have zero information on what it does. So with zero information, it makes this very hard. It also makes it very hard for people reading the patch notes to determine whether or not it is a good minion or not. So what's really cool here is the Radiant Crusade. It says that 10% of damage from hits is taken from your Sentinel of Radiant's life before you. But there's no information on how tanky this Radiant Sentinel is, if it does anything else except for just existing as a damage reduction. Because if that's the case, why not just make it so that you take 10% less damage, right? So there has to be other features to this, but we don't know this. The other part is the Unwavering Crusade. They added a change, making it so that you could trigger this Summoned Elemental Relic when you were nearby ally kill an enemy, but also have a 25% chance on hitting a rare unique enemy. They added this. This was not there on the first reveal of this, which is a very good change. But again, zero information on what a Summoned Elemental Relic actually does. So anyways, a few years ago, I asked Chris Wilson about the situation, and he said, we'll make sure that moving forward, we're going to have that information supplied to the community in the patch notes so that people can actually make guides and content and builds out of this information that we provide. Granted, this was quite a few years ago. They either missed it or forgot about it. I don't know. So what I did was I reached out to Chris Wilson and reminded him about it. And he said that he was going to remind the team. And then I just recently got confirmation that the team was confirmed the minion information, that they plan on posting it when the skills are ready, which leads me to believe that we're going to get the information on these things when we see the 2020 gem information before the league launches. So again, I'm very happy to have been able to have a good contact with the GGG staff members. And this is something that's been a very big problem from the minion side of things in the community whenever they've introduced new minions to the game. This is happening again, but this time they're already ready for it. They're going to give us the information before the league launches. So I'm very excited to see that, but I can't say more till we see that information. Next up, Bastion of Hope. So I'm going to show you some of my updated guides I have for 321. The minion related guides here, as you can see, it's pretty much just necromancers these days. I had a good mix of science and guardians and necromancers because it was good. Then some changes happened, and necromancer was the reign supreme minion ascendancy. Playing a guardian, it was okay, it was fine, it worked. The problem was that the necromancer outperformed it in defensive scaling, especially on lower budgets, because of the access to block through things like Bone Offering, because it gives you 35 and 34% block at level 20, 35 attack, 34 spells. This made it very easy to achieve a block state, and you could sacrifice the idea of running Flesh Offering for damage output, or rather DPS, since it's an attack speed bonus, in favor of other nodes on the tree. The Guardian had a situation where you needed to invest so much into the defenses that you lost the offensive edge it had. Now, not knowing the changes that we have on the minions, just looking at the defensive differences between the Necro and the idea of running a Guardian for minion builds is lower now. The differences were big before, now they're smaller, because now when you've attacked recently, you get 25% block instead of 10, and when you cast a spell, you get 25 spell instead of 10. That's a massive, massive change of 250%. So why is this so good? You still have to invest a little bit more in block than you do as a necromancer, but you gain the possibility of running that Flesh Offering, which means that because of this, you shouldn't need to sacrifice too much to making this a really solid approach for minion builds. So once we see the information of Radiant Crusade and Unwavering Crusade when it comes to the minions from there, it's going to be very fun to see if this is going to be the new minion meta or not, because it's very, very long time that we've been playing Necromancer meta for minion builds. So it's going to be very interesting to see if that's finally taken a shift, at least on a couple of builds. So I'm very excited for this. Next up would be the Vengeance Cascade. No longer makes the increased projectile speed, attack projectile return to you, or returning projectiles pierces all targets. Now all it does is that returning projectiles do so at 150% speed. So basically what I'm trying to say is the Vengeance Cascade is dead in the fucking water. It's shit, end of story, buried 6 feet deep, never to be seen again. They did a similar treatment to Anomalous Faster Proj, which was the previous saving grace for builds like Mage Skeletons, where you bump this up for the Anomalous Faster Proj for returning projectiles, was up to 60% at level 20. This now only gives 10% chance to return. 10%! So, basically, Mage Skeletons are on an edge of a cliff, literally hanging there with one hand trying to survive, huffing some copium in hopes for the new minion support gem to be extremely good. Otherwise, Mage Skeleton might see itself be a retired build guide leading into 322, which I hope is not going to be the case. I'll keep you guys posted. However, Vol Summon Skeletons did receive a small little cool buff. It doesn't really matter too much, but I want to mention it. Previously, Vol Summon Skeletons summoned a Skeleton Guardian, melee skeletons. Now they will also summon a Skeleton Mage, even if you don't have the Dead Reckoning. Previously 0, level 20, you get 5 Mage Skeletons in the mix of your Vol Summon Skeletons. Pretty cool. Doesn't really do much, but it's a cool change nonetheless. They also made a change to Alberon's Warpath for unique balance items, now making it so that the summoned skeletons cannot summon more than one skeleton warrior. This makes very little sense to me, since the very, 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 very few builds that used Alberon's Warpath was low budget minion builds, and the only reason you could maintain using Alberon's Warpath for a longer time, even touching upon red tier maps, was because once you hit enemies that did a lot of AoE damage, or bosses that did a lot of AoE damage that would kill most of your minions, you could still just quickly summon half of them with one button and you would be good. You'd still have your damage output. Now this change means that if something wipes your entire Skelly army, you're only able to summon one at a time. This change makes zero sense to me. I think it's stupid. I think it's completely unnecessary, especially because the vast majority of people using this item were low budget builds approaches, league starter styles. So why make it harder on the newer players? I don't know. And I'm not super angry about it. I just feel like it's an unnecessary nerf. And that kind of sums up the things that stood out the most for me. I'm not going to talk about the gem until we see the 2020 gems. This was a very short patch notes. Obviously, half of it was ruthless. Say make it of whatever you want. I don't think it's a big problem, but this sums up the things that stood out the most for me. There are plenty of other changes. There's some cool changes for the chieftain, for example, that has happened. Not something that I care too much about personally. I want to keep this video short, so I only tackle things that stood out the most for me personally. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And to keep this short, make sure you subscribe. That helps the channel out a lot. Hit the like button. Leave a comment down below. It helps my health, so I get healthy faster. I get better faster if you just leave a comment. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, as always, stay safe. Keep rocking.